Hey team, Valentine here from Belvoir Rugby Resource. Today we have another position workshop. We're talking to the loose forwards and we have special guest Brad Shields on, currently playing for the Wasps and the English rugby team, formerly of the Wellington Hurricanes and New Zealand under-20s. Apologies, we missed the first part of his chat. Awesome chat just about his personal life, but we get the back end of it and the position specific stuff as well. So he talks to us about tackle tech specifically and talks about the physicality and the work rate that's involved in this position, but he also talks to us about life balance and the important lessons he's learned in recent years around having other things outside of rugby to enjoy. Hope you guys enjoy this as much as I did. Cheers.
Just going back here, and last of all, before we get into some position specific stuff, just your interest outside of rugby.
Yeah, I mean, over here is probably a massive one for me is family. So I mean, coming over here, I'm 6 months old, and my wife, my mum, and my dad over here. So for me, the biggest interest is my family. I love to get out on the golf course every now and then, although the weather doesn't permit too much during the season. But I love to hit a ball. I'm not very good at golf, but it's a bit of fun if you get a cart, Back in New Zealand, we did some bit of free diving for some power, some shellfish, and try and catch some crayfish. Not very good at it. Again, can't hold my breath for too long. But I think anything outdoorsy, like we go for walks all the time, just somewhere new, because over here there's so many different places you can visit, like castles, you got bushwalks, you got all sorts. You got the Cotswolds not far from here. So I think just being outside and that's probably my biggest interest. Doesn't sound too exciting, but
No, that's. I think like when I'm asking that question, really, I'm getting at often the perception is that like professional rugby players, they live, breathe, and eat rugby. That's it. But the more you get to know you fellas, and the more you dig, you realise you guys need time away from the sport to make yourselves better. Like it's all about balance, and if you just fixate on rugby all the time, it's to your detriment. So,
man, 100%. It's a burnout. It's like anything. Like if you with your schoolwork or whatever it might be, if you put 10 or 12 hours a day, then you're probably going to get over it pretty quickly. So you're right. It's about the balance, and when you can get away from it and distract your mind, which I'm learning about all the time, like that work-life balance type thing.
Yeah, I bet it's you're getting more and more help with that, with the family and the wife now. They'll hold you accountable for sure.
Massively.
Our games master at the school, man, so essentially head of sport, and then one of the big rugby coaches as well. He's a Canes man, Wellington man.
Oh, lovely stuff.
But he's asking here, Surf to Peak Challenge. Who's usually the Canes Surf to Peak Challenge winner? And then he's also asking how important the challenges within the training and pre-season, why are they important, and how do they affect the team environment?
Is this in Super Rugby, that second one part of Super Rugby as well, or?
Oh, just in general, like in pre-season and stuff, just making sure that, like, how important is it to have like a bit of rivalry and team challenges going, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'll answer the Surf to Peak one. It's ever since I was there always seemed to be a different winner each year. Like I was lucky enough to win it once.
So could you just explain real briefly to the lads? Most of the lads won't know what it is. Yeah.
Sorry, of course. So the Surf to Peak's basically a traditional. So pre-season for the Hurricanes goes 4, sometimes 5 weeks before Christmas. You get 2 weeks off over Christmas, and then you go into the new year, another couple of weeks of pre-season and play a game. So at the end of that block before Christmas, we do a traditional. It's been going for a while now. I'm not sure exactly how many years, but I'd definitely say over about 15 years or something like that. Yeah. And you basically start at a point on the beach. I'm not sure if many of you know Wellington. It's surrounded by a lot of water. So you sprint. It's basically a 1K sprint, and I don't think I've ever run 1K as fast as that because there's so many people trying to get on their bikes quickly. You jump on your bike, you ride 20 kilometers or so around all the bays to one of the main points in the city, and then it's basically a vertical climb up to this big lookout which looks over all of Wellington. And so that's something that we do on the last day before we head away for Christmas and stuff. So a bit of competition. It's a bit of fun, I guess. Go have breakfast and stuff afterwards. But I think it's just that tick in the box, that bit of team camaraderie, how hard you want to work and all that sort of stuff. So essentially, at the end before Christmas, you're all together looking over your city, which is quite cool. You know, I don't think many other teams do anything similar to that. So I was lucky enough to win it once, but I think the hardest thing each year is someone always gets injured. So a real fit guy always gets injured, or you're in a pack where you've got a really good cyclist but an absolute rubbish runner. So I was lucky enough that I was a decent cyclist and a decent runner. So if I stuck in that front pack on the bike, then I'd be up the hill. But some of those big boys, you know, props and that, they can tune out on the bike, but as soon as they get on their feet, they're no good. So that was awesome. Yeah. No, I mean, it's something you look forward to. It's hard, but I mean, we love that at the end of it because it's a sign off, and then you can look forward to your little break.
Nice.
Pre-season stuff, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the thing about pre-season is that, from what I can remember, especially in New Zealand, is that the only guys that are there are the guys who aren't international rugby players. So all the All Black guys, and they have just finished their tours. So I think the biggest thing is as important as expressing yourself, but also working hard to become the fittest you possibly can and give yourself the best chance to play rugby. And that, along with that, comes a lot of competitiveness, which leads into the season. So the idea, or what I always tell the boys was, you know, we want to set a standard in pre-season of the way we want to train, which leads into the whole season, so that when the All Black guys or the top guys come back into the squad, they've got to come to our standard. So that was something that we drove every session. Obviously, you had some setbacks along the way, and I think that's a very similar mindset over here in England. The pre-seasons always run a little bit different, but I think essentially you want that environment to be humming, the culture to be great, the enjoyment to be great, but the competitiveness to be, you know, through the roof, so that when you hit that first game and the All Black guys come back, you're like, man, this team is on fire, and we just want to do as best we can for the group. And also gives guys an opportunity to show how much they want to be part of the group and how much they want to try and fight for a starting position as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great mindset and a mind shift as well. Because we would have similar with, as these boys get older, particularly their last couple of years of school, boys will get picked up for rep programs, and then they go off and they sort of come back into the school environment, because the schoolboys stay with the school through the summer. Same thing, pre-season. They're working their butts off while these other guys are at the rep level. And I think sometimes people are like, oh, we're working hard, but we'll wait till these boys get back, and it'll change the dynamic. But what you're saying to me is like, nah, like if you're in the school group, the core group, work your ass off and push the standards to be even higher. So when those guys come back from their Leinster reps or whatever it is, it's like, oh man, this far out. These guys have lifted, gone to another level, and we have to match that.
Yeah, exactly. And it puts pressure on guys coming back to be fit as well, because they've got a status of being a rep player or an international player, whatever it might be. So they don't want to get left behind.
Nice, mate. We'll rip into these like position specific. So all the guys on here watching, they're all back rowers or lock loosies. Lots of them had questions around the defence. So just in terms of just describing yourself as a defender, and then just giving some of your own stats. I think the boys are sort of interested to see, like, how many tackles do you think you should make, and versus how many do you actually make, type thing.
Yeah, it'll be different to what you think for two different comps, but I'll get into that one. I think for me, like if you're a back row, I think traditionally, obviously, the number 7 is going to be the more, probably make the most tackles in a game, just because of his position, where he is in the scrum and line out and all that sort of stuff. But for me, in my position as a 6 or potentially an 8 or a lock, I think physicality is probably a massive part of it. And I think obviously the first thing is about technique, and I won't say I'm the most technically sound, but obviously having some sort of technical element to your game means you can be more physical. And I think that's something that I've learned throughout the years is, you want to throw your shoulder into everything you possibly can, but there's got to be a bit of method to the madness in a sense. So for me, I think physicality is a massive thing. Accuracy is obviously one as well. In terms of stats, I definitely think 7 will make the most tackles. It's different. Super Rugby, a big game for me, like a lot of tackles would probably be up around 14 or 15. Whereas I come over to England, the game's slightly different. So, my first couple of games, and I remember when I played Leinster, I think we lost by 50 points or something, but I ended up making 27 tackles or something like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
I've never made that ever in a game before. And I've done that 2 or 3 times since I've been here. So I think that it's a different type of style game. There's more forward orientated, more carries, all that sort of stuff. Whereas Super Rugby potentially, I mean, we might have the ball, so the Hurricanes might have the ball more than the opposition. So therefore your tackle stats are low. But if I could wrap that up, I definitely think technical aspect, you need to be technically sound. And depending on what your body type is, what your size, physicality, and I think accuracy is probably a massive part. And I think if I want to chuck one more thing in there, is probably post tackle. So what you do after that, whether you get to your feet, join the defence line, get up for a poach or a jackal, or you want to fire through the ruck, you want to take guys out and you want to turn the ruck over that way. So I think it's always a double action, if that makes sense.
Yep. So just in terms of the tackle tech itself, have you got a quick breakdown or a rough breakdown, maybe some tips on the boys? I know that a lot of the tech's similar, but for you personally, what defines a good tackle or a dominant tackle?
For me, I'm not really a good chop tackler, so I always tend to be a passive tackle if I make a chop tackle. So for me, it's probably about sort of nipple height, between the nipple height and where the ball is carried. So there's not much of a margin. It's probably only about that much, if you can see on a scale of what I'm trying to do. But for me, what I try and practice the most is really short, really close to my defender, attacker. So it'll all be about that foot placement, really close to the body, and try and punch my shoulder through. And I think that's sort of the last part of the tackle that I try and work on, because generally you can work on footwork outside of that, trying to get or whatever the lead up might be to that tackle. But for me, I think the biggest thing that I work on is that foot placement and that real punch and that second action of the leg drive, because you can always get in a good position, but if you don't have the leg drive, you can't make it a dominant tackle. If you don't have the shoulder contact, it's going to be a passive tackle, if that makes sense.
Yeah. This is probably a selfish question. This is for my own development. So you're talking about like shortening the distance, so you're it's that sort of footwork in close, right?
So carry on, bro.
So from there, I'm thinking like, you know, when you're hitting like in the plane and the angle that you're hitting, often we would have slid up, and obviously it's pretty dangerous nowadays. So we're looking at going like through. So we're hitting a little lower, or like wherever you wanted to hit, you're starting at that position and you're hoping to drive straight through there. How do you get down low enough? If you know what I mean, how do you get into the low body position, hitting cleanly through in such a short distance? Do you drop down as you chop your feet, or do you have a hack around that?
I think that's been my biggest work on over the last 10 years. But no, I see what you mean. Like, I guess for me, the biggest thing that I've learned is how I can bend my knees and use my knees.
Okay, great.
That's why I try and set up as close as I can and try and make the time to get lower shorter. But if you can sink your knees quicker, your top half sort of follows. So I think that's what I try and do, rather than just hinging at the waist.
Yeah.
And using sort of your hammies and stuff to try and power you out of it. If you drop your knees, your profile automatically gets a little bit lower, and then it's the last little bit where you need to hinge. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've taken out of it. And a good way to practice that sort of stuff is like, I put my hands behind my back, and someone would, like, I had a trainer hold out a Swiss ball about eye height, and as soon as he dropped it, I have to try and get under it and catch it on the ground. So it's almost like a clean, but it's just trying to get used to using your knees and bending your knees rather than bending at the hips.
Yeah, nice. That's a great little exercise as well. I might even put that up later. How often do you practice do you rep out your tackle profile during the week? Might look different at the moment with maybe not enough people to train with, but what's the ideal? How much time would you be spending doing that?
So there's a lot of I think the majority of it is, like I said, that technical side to it, so not so much the physicality, but I'll get to that. But I think the coach has blocks within the session that works on specifically tackle. So I think I split it up, so every team session, it doesn't sound much, but it's definitely enough. I'll take 5 minutes. So it might be 5 minutes for this, 5 minutes for attack, 5 minutes for breakdown or whatever. So I'll take 5 minutes on a Monday, and it will be purely technical. It'll be about getting my body position in the right place, make sure I've got my rep, or might be footwork, and then leave the last step. Tuesday might be a little bit of footwork onto a bag, still not 100%. And then the performance session of the week, it's only 15 minutes a week, and that'll be where I just go balls out. It'll be like getting everything, bringing it all together, and trying to end with physicality and being as physical as I can, so that I can take that mindset into the game as closest to the game as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking making 20 tackles. I'm talking about 2 on each shoulder, 1 on each shoulder. That's like definitely your, 100% sort of tackle, because you want to preserve yourself as well.
Yeah. Now this is good, man. Because we've sort of, we sort of talked around it with lots of the boys, and they've sort of, the theme that I'm getting from them is actually less reps, but more intention, and more like, what is it? You got to be really intentional and detailed about what you're doing, so it's quality almost.
Massively. And I think a big thing we're moving into now in the professional era is a lot of visualization stuff.
Yeah.
It can take you a long way if you just sit there. Like, it might sound silly, but close your eyes and just envision yourself going through the moment. And even if you're in a game, like, envision yourself going through that last step or making that big tackle, because you'll be surprised at how many times you actually find yourself in that exact situation again. And you're like, oh wait, I've seen this. I know what to do here.
Yeah, that's a great example. I was thinking about it the other day. If you're running, like, say you're going for a 3K run around the block, if you've never run that route before, it always feels sort of slow. But the next time you run it, you've been there. Your brain's been there, so you're like, I don't have to worry about things I can't factor in or environment. I just go. So
yeah, exactly, bro. 100%.
Same principle. That's great, man. That's flipping awesome. We'll go through. We'll skip through the rest of that. We'll just go straight to the attack stuff there. Just talking about sort of the aspects that you bring as a player. A few of the boys have written in and said, like, they've noticed that you're quite a good offloader and got a good offload game. So they're sort of wondering, what are your favourite aspects of attack? And then in terms of the modern day loose forward, particularly where you're at 6, like, where do you think there's opportunities for us to grow as loose forwards, or even improve on in our attacking game?
Yeah, that's very kind of you guys saying about offloading. That's good. I mean, if I can get a decent one in there, then I'll be stoked in the game. But I think, like, for me, it's definitely around, like, recently it's been around the way we play with WAS, or we're trying to play, is trying to be on the edge a little bit. So I like being out wider, let the big boys do a bit of the carrying, and then you potentially get the ball out a little bit wider with a bit of space or in broken play. So that's something that I've grown up with, and certainly played with the Hurricanes as well, and that sort of in that game plan sort of thing. So that's where I feel like I enjoy it the most. But I also love getting in and amongst it, carrying hard and carrying the brick walls. You got to love that part of rugby, otherwise I don't think you get too much further. In regards to skill, I think you can see back rows evolving with, like you're saying, that micro detail skills. So it might be linking with the backs. It might be, if we're number 8, it's handing pass off the deck of a scrum. I think that's probably the biggest thing that as a back row you can start to develop as your skills. And that's just catch and pass. That's just, like you're saying, just practicing those offloads, practicing popping the ball off the ground, what it might be. And I think, like, you look at Tom Curry, for example, traditionally he's quite a hard-nosed player. And I think leading into that World Cup, from what I'd seen, he just loved the physical. He loved tackling. But from that sort of pre-season to the World Cup moving on, man, you could see him using his passing skill, his offloading skill, all that sort of stuff in the World Cup and post-World Cup Six Nations as well. So for a back row lock, even locks, I think the ball skill, that would be my biggest thing, is just keep tapping away. And you can get all sorts of drills online. I mean, you'd know lots of drills yourself, but it's sticking to it. I do, even now in isolation, I do 20 minutes of skill per day, just passing the ball against the wall or chucking a tennis ball against the wall, hand-eye coordination, all that stuff, because the game's getting faster and faster.
Yeah, nice. Perfect. That's great. I just want to lock back into, so we've gone through some of that position-specific stuff. I just want to talk about, like, the mindset of a loosey, because I know that, like, if you look at any team, loose forwards are always the same type of person, and there's, like, they've got a certain sick mentality Like the good ones anyway. They kind of twist it in their head a little bit. But what's that mindset? Like, what's that about? Like when you're going out in the field, you're writing 3 things on your wrist, on your strapping tape to go into a game, thinking and sort of using that as a constant reminder. What are they? What are you thinking, and what kind of how are you trying to enforce yourself in the game?
I think for me personally, it's just I think I'll just go back to that work rate one. I think being the hardest worker on the pitch is definitely is number one. So being involved as much as you possibly can, and I think as I said that being physical, like no matter if it's a carry, if it's a tackle, it's in and around a breakdown, more, even if it's like I don't know what it might be. I think that physicality is something that a back rower definitely needs to keep being in mind of. And you say you've got to have that sort of sick mentality. You've got to be willing to put your head into a hole. You've got to be willing to like hurt yourself in a sense to achieve the outcome. And I think that's probably something that I think most back rowers, like we sit down and we go through each week before a game what we want to look like on the field when we review it. And we used to say, look, we want to be the most physical and energizing people on the team. Like we're the ones that drive the energy on the group. If things are flat, the loose forward, everyone looks for the loose forwards because they're the guys who are generally the fittest or the most physical. So energize the bunnies, physical, and I think just that work rate.
Nice, bro.
If that answers your question.
No, that's good. That's good. Just last question there. I know you got to shoot off. Just one of the boys is asking here about how you developed your offload game. Have you always had it? And if so, how have you improved it? Are there any drills that you do, or is there anything that you're looking for when you're giving the ball off?
That's a great question. I think for me, when I was younger, for me now, I'm probably a little bit more reserved, and this is what I'm working on again. I've kind of been on like a little bit of a roller coaster. So when I was younger, it's that ability to be able to express yourself. So having no fear and the consequence potentially, and trusting that your skill you can execute a skill like that. Now I probably overthink things a little bit too much. So I think for me, it's going back to my younger days, just to think like, you've been practicing this skill for your whole career. You need to trust that, sometimes a 50-50 pass is going to come off if you've been doing the work. And I'm not saying 50-50s are the best option, but you soon, I think if you practice more, then it becomes more like an 80-20% decision rather than a 50-50. And I think for me, like one of the best drills that I do, I've got like a half ball. I'm not sure if you guys have used those before. And all I do is basically flick it against the wall like that and flick it with my right hand, because I'm terrible with my right hand. My hands are really small. So I don't have, much control of the ball sometimes. So I think for me, it's just trying to keep the ball hugged in nice and close. I'm not sure if you can see. Give me 1 second. See the ball in the backyard, so.
Oh, perfect.
Just even with a rugby ball, like I think when you're looking to do an offload, it's about holding the ball with your pinky up, and then as soon as you try and flick it, it's about trying to flick your wrist up. So that's all I do against the wall. I just flick it and bounce back. Just flick it, and I'll do I don't know 40 or so on each side. And I think then you add a step into it and flick it, and you add another step and flick to it. I think it's just it might sound real basic, but you'd be surprised at how basic the drills we do and how predominant they are in rugby all over the world. And professionals that have been doing it for years and years and years probably do the most basic skill that you can think of.
Yeah, because I think that's the misconception from a young age. You're like, oh, they must come up with like the most amazing drills to perform those skills. I mean, when you see it on TV from every different camera angle, it looks amazing. But what they don't realise is like, mate, I've been doing the same thing for the last 10 years, and that's why I have the confidence to be able to throw that. So it is, it is those simple things. And like if I'm getting anything from you, or the big thing I'm getting from you, and it's been a big theme for the week, is being like little and often, like just being consistent 100%. With your training. Doesn't have to be grand, or like, this big display of fireworks, but it just chip away at it.
Yeah, massively, bro. I totally I mean, that's something that I've been taught all through my career. And sometimes you think more is more, but I think sometimes less is more as well. And you're talking skill and all that sort of stuff, because you can only chuck a ball against the wall for so many times. But it's how you want to approach that situation. Like, I'm chucking a ball against the wall because I'm trying to get better. So it doesn't matter how many times I do it, I'm getting better and better and better.
Yeah, nice, bro. Last thing there, bro. Just 2 values, mate, that rugby's taught you, that you've carried into the rest of your life, whether it being a dad or a husband or a better mate. Two things that, or 2 values that rugby's taught you.
I think that one of the biggest things for me is probably around rugby, but talent only gets you so far. It's about what you do outside, so it's about work rate, it's about everything you can do for yourself as a discipline, like we talked about before. And I think you can relate that to most things as well. Like, you can do something for a few weeks and look really good, but it's what you do the next 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 weeks that's going to make the biggest difference. And probably the biggest value for me now is, I think what we talked about earlier is that life balance. So especially for young guys as well, you got to make sure that you want to, when you're on, you got to work really hard. You got to understand that when you're not on, you can actually chill and you can actually spend time with friends. You can have fun being a kid, and I'm still a big kid, to be fair, at heart. Like, even though I got a wife and a daughter, she probably thinks I'm more mature than my daughter, to be fair. So I think just having a good balance, because if you get wrapped up too much in your mind, then you can start to overthink things, and that's what I used to do as a player. So be simple, but make sure when you're ready to switch it on, then ready to do the work and anything.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, that's fucking awesome, man. Brad, mate, legend. Thanks for your time. I'm sure the boys have got a heap out of this, and we'll get a bunch of feedback from the boys in terms of what they took away from this, and I'll flick them on to you.
Yeah, lovely. And if anyone's got any more questions or wants some extreme tips or something,
watch out.
Afraid to sing out.
I'm going to be asking you for some videos now, so I can make some more YouTube tutorials.
I can use my daughter Charlie as a tackle bag or something like that, maybe.
Come on, mate.
She's tough.
Cheers, Dioli. Thanks for your time again, mate. We really appreciate it.
No worries.
And, all the best with the training.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it. See you later.
Cheers, well. Talk soon.
See you, bro.